Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our presentation, Beyond Ekphrasis, Poetic Collaboration in Artists' Books, featuring the art books of Holly Trossel Brigham and three poets that she has collaborated with on three projects, Marilyn Nelson, Wendy Sloan, and myself. My name is Angela Alima O'Donnell, and I will serve as moderator of our panel today. Today's recording features a reprise of the panel presentation we offered at the Poetry by the Sea conference in May of 2024. The four of us are glad for the opportunity to get together again through the magic of Zoom to talk about the projects that we have been involved with and to read and listen to one another's poems. Thank you for joining us today. Today's program gives us a marvelous opportunity to explore the relationship between the image and the word. Each of these distinctive books that Holly has designed and created is an embodiment of her vision, and it is also animated by the voice of the poet that she has worked with. In these meticulously crafted books, image and word come together in an act of co-creation, producing a book that is powerful, beautiful, and entirely original. So we hope you enjoy the program. We hope you enjoy seeing the books and hope you enjoy listening to the poems. Our procedure today will be to hear first from the artist, Holly, who will give us an overview of the art books that she has designed in collaboration with each of us. Then each of the three poets, Marilyn, myself, and Wendy, will read selected poems from the project we worked on with Holly and say a few words about our process and the experience of collaboration. So I'd like to begin by introducing Holly and each of the poets. Holly Trossel Brigham is a painter who creates life-size figures in watercolor that depict historical and mythological women. Brigham has had a solo show at the Delaware Art Museum called I Wake Again, Holly Trossel Brigham on Elizabeth Siddal, which opened in February of 2022 and went through May of that year. In 2023, Brigham also had a solo show at the Reading Museum in Reading, PA. Within the last few years, she has had solo exhibitions at the Somerville Manning Gallery in 2019, the Michener Museum in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, and at the Southern Alleghenies Museum of Art. Brigham has collaborated with award-winning poet Marilyn Nelson on a series of nuns who were artists and writers, Sacred Sisters. Holly and Marilyn produced an artist's book to document the collaboration and launched the book at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in November of 2016. The edition of 12 has found homes at Smith College, Lafayette College, Penn State, and the Smithsonian Institution, the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, among others. Her second artist book, Mother Monument, was launched at the Arthur Ross Gallery at the University of Pennsylvania in September of 2018 and has been placed at the Beinecke Library, the Smithsonian Institution, the National Museum of Women in the Arts, Rutgers University, and others institutions. Her third artist book, I Wake Again, was completed in December 2021 and has been placed at the Beinecke Library, Rutgers University, the University of Delaware Library, and the Fisher Fine Arts Library at the University of Pennsylvania. It is a collaboration with the poet Kim Bridgeford. Brigham's fourth artist book, Poor Persis, with poet Angela O'Donnell, launched at the Philadelphia Athenaeum on October the 6th, 2023, and her fifth book, Amicizia, with poet Wendy Sloan, launched at the Rosenbach Library in March of 2020. Brigham was born in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, attended Smith College, where she studied art history, and studied abroad in Florence, Italy. She went on to study art history at the graduate level at the University of Pittsburgh, fine art at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, and then earned her MFA in painting at the George Washington University. She has taught at Pasadena City College, Worcester State College, the Worcester Art Museum, and the Baum School of Art. Brigham lives in Philadelphia with her husband, David. After Holly speaks, we will hear from our first poet, Marilyn Nelson. Marilyn is a prize-winning, award-winning poet who does not really need an introduction, so well known is her work. But briefly, she describes herself as former poet laureate of Connecticut, the author of many prize-winning books for adults, young adults, and children. Marilyn is currently retired from a long teaching career. She lives quietly with her daughter and three cats. I would also like to introduce Wendy Sloan. Wendy Sloan wrote a series of essays on Italian Renaissance women poets for the Mezzo-Cammin Women's Poets Timeline Project. They can be found online at www.mezzocammin.com. And that's really a site worth exploring because there are many wonderful essays about many wonderful women poets. This spring, her translation of Italian poet Gaspara Stampa's sonnet number 208 won a Reader's Choice Award from the British poetry journal Orbis. Her poems, translations, and book reviews have appeared in the Alabama Literary Review, Blue Unicorn, Measure, Mezzo-Cammin, Orbis, The Orchard, Pratique, Shadow Play, and Think, among other publications. They also have appeared in various anthologies, including the Able Muse translation issue, the Best of the Raintown Review, and Poems for a Liminal Age. Her collection is Sunday Mornings at the Cafe Mediterranean, published by Kelsey Books. She was a finalist in the Nemirov Sonnet Competition, and several of her poems have been nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. And finally, I will introduce myself. As I mentioned earlier, and as my Zoom square says, my name is Angela Alaimo O'Donnell. I'm a poet, scholar, and professor at Fordham University in New York City, and I also serve as Associate Director of Fordham's Curran Center for American Catholic Studies. My publications include 11 collections of poems. In addition, I've published a memoir about caring for my dying mother, Mortal Blessings, a book of hours based on the practical theology of Flannery O'Connor, The Province of Joy, a critical biography of O'Connor, like Flannery O'Connor, Fiction Fired by Faith. And in 2020, I published the first book-length study of Flannery O'Connor and race, Radical Ambivalence, Race, and Flannery O'Connor. My most recent book, Dear Dante, is a collection of poems in conversation with the great Dante Alighieri, and that was published in 2024. So I am very happy to give the screen over to Holly Trossel Brigham.
Thank you so much, Angela. We're going to have a PowerPoint. And one moment, here we go. Okay, so here's our original first screen from the poetry conference. Angela, if I could have the next image, please. Here we see my very first artist book, Sacred Sisters. And the book would not have happened if I hadn't first asked my dear friend Kim Bridgeford for a recommendation on a poet who might visit my daughter's prep school, the Baldwin School in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. And Kim suggested that we contact Marilyn Nelson, and we wanted someone who could come to the school and visit and spend a day with lower school students and middle school students. And Marilyn agreed, and we were thrilled. And I got to meet her as the parent liaison for the day, and she was kind enough to ask what I was working on. And I had just started a series of paintings of nuns who were artists and writers, and she was very excited by this subject, and we had a lovely conversation, and she suggested that we might collaborate, and I was thrilled and just very excited by it, and it turned into a collaboration. And we worked on, I had only painted, I was working on the third nun, and we went back and forth. She made wonderful suggestions, and we had exhibitions of the paintings and Marilyn's poems. And afterwards, I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a permanent way of referencing this collaboration? So I thought to do an artist book, which I had never done. And so what we see here is Sacred Sisters. And there's the book box and the book. Angela, if I could have the next image, please. And here is the crocheted metal closure for the book box, which was actually made by my friend Cookie Weatherburn. If we could see the next image, please. The book actually does a couple tricks, which artist books often do, and it's really wonderful. So it can stand up, it creates a star, and it's hand stitched with red thread. And it can also be spread out in several different ways. Angela, if I could have the next image, please. You can see either the images or the poems first. And it was Marilyn's idea to write the poems in the first person and to write them as prayers, which I think is just a really ideal way of presenting them. If I could have the next image, please. So the book shows the painting on the left-hand side and then Marilyn's poem. I created initial letters and paintings, and these were original works in watercolor. And the building behind the initial letter for the poem is either the convent or the temple where the nuns lived. And this is St. Catherine of Bologna. And she was the patron saint for the arts, and she actually did 3 art forms. So here she's playing the violetta, which is the foremother of the violin. She has an icon painting behind her, which she actually made. And then on the table to her side is an illuminated manuscript. If I may see the next image, please. Here we have Henrietta DeLille, who started the first order for African-American nuns in the middle of the 19th century. It was one of Marilyn's suggestions. I have her working on embroidering the little vestments for the Black baby Jesus doll in the convent. If I may have the next image, please. And this is Hilaria Batista de Almeida, a part of the Sisterhood of the Good Death, which was an order also started in the 19th century. It still exists in Brazil. And we have the nun holding the carved wooden medallion that represents the order. Actually, the model for my painting is my next door neighbor, Laron Anderson Bell, and I am the model for the Madonna statue in the background. And it's the sisters have a 3-day festival during, it's in August, and it celebrates the Assumption of the Virgin Mary into heaven. If I may have the next image, please. Then I want to move on and just briefly talk about Mother Monument, which is my second artist book, which was created in 2018. And it's an obelisk form. It takes a series of paintings actually that were done before the nuns called Seven Sisters. And when I conceived it as an obelisk form, I wanted to make it a monument to women artists. And as far as I know, there's no such monument that exists. And I thought, well, an obelisk has 4 sides. I only have 7 paintings, so I need another painting. So I actually created the one on the base here is my painting called Edmonia and Cleopatra. And it is a watercolor centering around the 19th century sculptress Edmonia Lewis. She was African-American and Native American, and I thought that she really needed to be on this monument. And Marilyn actually wrote the poem for her, and Angela is one of the other poets. So I worked with 8 women poets, 1 to go with each of the paintings. If I may have the next image, please. The monument has the 4 poems on the very top part, and then the second or the next 4 poems to make up 8 on the bottom actually have flaps that open up. So I thought, well, the obelisk form is a very masculine form. How can I kind of reappropriate it for, for feminine feminist subject matter. And so the flaps on the bottom, when they're open, if you look down from the top, it forms a flower form. May I have the next image, please? And the base opens up, and so it creates almost like a tune-like feeling. And there's a tiny book that goes as part of the artist book. And if I may have the next image, please. It actually has the all of the 8 artists in either their self-portraits, or in Edmonia Lewis's case, it's a photograph of her. And on the back side are the poems. And so the book can be arranged like this. It can also be arranged in a star form. If we may have the next image, please, you'll see the flaps opened up to reveal the 4 poems at the bottom of the monument. I wanted it to be black and white because I wanted it to feel like a memorial, or also to reference, you know, when we see these obelisks, either in cemeteries or in town squares, they're usually made out of stone or marble. So they're very, you know, it's a monochromatic feeling. So let's go on to my 3rd artist book, Angela. And the next book that I did was called I Wake Again. And it was based on the 19th century British artist, Elizabeth Siddal. Elizabeth Siddal was a pre-Raphaelite artist. She was also a poet. And most people don't know that about her. Most people know her as a muse and a model for the male pre-Raphaelite artists. She was actually married to Dante Gabriele Rossetti. And I wanted to create a whole body of work around her to bring more awareness to the fact that she was an artist and a poet in her own right. So what we see here is the box for the artist book. It has 4 painted images on the top, and they're the 4 seasons. And my daughter Flora is the model for 2 of them. There is the book that has Elizabeth's initials on the top. And there is a 19th century period apothecary bottle that has dried pigment in it. If I may see the next image, please. This was an artist book collaboration with Kim Bridgeford. So Kim and I knew each other for years. She attended my wedding in 1990. She was married to Pete Duvall, who was my husband David Brigham's friend at the University of Connecticut when they were undergraduates. That's how I met Kim. But we collaborated in many ways on different projects over the years. And I really wanted to do an artist book with her. So it was the opportunity to do it. In this particular image, you see there are 2 pages on the inside of the lid of the box, and they're actually Tennyson poems from a 19th century book. Tennyson was Elizabeth Siddal's favorite poet. So I thought it would be important to have it in the book. If we may see the next image, please. It's a close-up of the lid of the box. And the next image, please. This shows hair that I stitched into the book to form S's for Siddal. A lot of her story has been centered around the fact that she had beautiful red hair. May I have the next page, please? Here you see a page, one of my images of Siddal working at her easel, and Kim's sonnet. And the next image, please. I just want you all to see this and know that when Kim had finished all the poems before she died, and but she never got to see the finished book. And I was missing her dedicatory poem. So I asked Angela if she would help me solve that problem. And her acknowledgements, I'm sorry. And so what Angela did was she came up with the idea of writing a dedicatory poem to Kim and to to Elizabeth Siddal and other female poets in the 19th century. So it was perfect. And Angela actually helped me to get the book out. We did the launch together at the University of Delaware at the Mark Glasner Special Collection. They collected the book and we launched it together. And Angela read Kim's sonnets, which were just brilliant. Here, Elizabeth is with Dante Gabriele Rossetti. The next image, please, shows Elizabeth Siddal actually died of a laudanum overdose. And so this is showing that, and Kim's sonnet Rot. And the last image, please, for I Wake Again, shows it's an abstraction of red hair. And now if we could go to my fourth book, Poor Persis. And this was a collaboration with Angela. And I met Angela through Kim, actually. Kim did a birthday party for Sylvia Plath at Westchester University. And Kim asked me to do a little, to create an piece of artwork around Sylvia Plath and to read one of her poems. And Angela was invited to write a poem and to read her favorite Plath poem as well. So it was wonderful to finally do a solo collaboration with Angela. Poor Persis is a Victorian mourning book, and it has these are little stitched roundels that I made, and the photograph is of my husband David Brigham's great aunt, Persis Brigham, who lived at the end of the 19th century and sadly died at age 2 of scarlet fever. We inherited photographs of her, and I wanted to do some sort of memorial to her. If I may have the next image, please. And Angela wrote sonnets, and this is the inside of the book. There's an image of Poor Persis on the left, which is based on a miniature painting on ivory that I inherited. The center portion is a Victorian mourning card that includes a sonnet by Angela. And then on the far right is the little Poor Persis book. Next image, please. We'll see a detailed view of the mourning card. These are cards that were made in the Victorian period when someone died, and they would be handed out at the funeral or to loved ones. And as far as I know, Persis didn't have one, but she may have, and it just hasn't come down to us in present day. So I wanted to create one for her. And my daughter Flora is the model. Next image, please. There's also an antique period tear catcher, which is in the little box inside of the book. The next image, please. We'll see the book Poor Persis. It's printed on beautiful paper. It's letterpress. Next image, please. And Angela's sonnets are made. It was her idea to create them as a conversation between Persis's parents as she's dying in their arms. So Frank Brigham and Minnie Brigham have a conversation with one another. And the initial letter of each of the sonnets spells out Persis's name. And when Angela reads them, that will become more clear. May I have the next image, please? When you stand the book up, it creates a star. The next image, please. It can also, this is sort of a side view of it when it's creating a star. I decided to use the photographs that we have, and may I have the next image, please? So you'll see here's Frank Markham Brigham, who was Persis's father. Next image, please. And I have, baby pictures up to the time that Persis died. So the images throughout the book sort of show her as an infant and then at the age when she passed away. Okay, so now let's go on to the next, my fifth book, which is entitled Amicizia. It is a xylotech, which is the Greek word for wooden book. Xylotechs started in the Middle Ages, and they were made essentially out of a particular wood from a tree, and then inside, when you would open it up, you would see items that related to the tree. This is a walnut book. May I have the next image, please? It was a collaboration with Wendy Sloan, and when I finished Poor Persis, I was starting to think about this book and the idea for it, and I asked Angela if she had any recommendations for a poet who knew about historic women and in Italy and who might be interested in this project, and she recommended Wendy. So I was thrilled that Wendy agreed to do it. The xylotech Amicizia, which is friendship in Italian, is an imaginary exchange friendship book between two 17th century Italian artists, Artemisia Gentileschi and Giovanna Garzoni. Here we see the spine of the book with their initials and Amicizia. May I have the next image, please? When you open the book up, you see a painting on the left, which is a watercolor on vellum, which I painted to evoke the style of Giovanna Garzoni. The subject is a bowl of walnuts, and there are walnuts on the table. So once again, referencing the idea that the book is made of walnut. There is a butterfly on the edge of the Chinese import bowl, porcelain bowl, which is the Artemisia butterfly. You see the book, a leather-bound book, well, actually it's loosely bound, on the right-hand side with embossed gold title, Amicizia. May I have the next image, please? There is a close-up. This is, there are a few different types of the way I painted the inside of the book. This one shows little ants eating cookie crumbs that go around the edge. And this is something that Giovanna Garzoni liked to do. She was a miniature painter, and she would love to have tiny details like this. The next image, please. Here we see the book opened up. It's tied with velvet ribbons, and the pages are loose. I wanted to do that because I wanted it to not only reference the way an artist's portfolio is, where you go from one drawing to the next, but also the fact that this is meant to be an exchange. It's actually a sonnet crown, which was Wendy's idea, which I think is just wonderful. And so it's meant to be, this is a book that Giovanna Garzoni has made to give to Artemisia Gentileschi. There is new scholarship from about 3 years ago that shows that the artists working in Florence were not rivals, they were actually friends. They traveled to England together. And so the idea is that they've returned, and Giovanna wants to thank Artemisia Gentileschi for the wonderful time they've had together on this trip to England. So it's English walnut. She's written the letter, so she's written the first poem and then sends it to Artemisia. Artemisia writes the next one and it comes back, and then it continues that way. May I have the next image, please? Here you see the Italian laid paper that I used and the Roma watermark, which shows Romulus and Remus. May I have the next image, please? The fonts were chosen carefully. I studied each artist's handwriting, and I chose fonts that would reference the handwriting. So here we have Giovanna writing to Artemisia, so it looks like Giovanna's handwriting. The next image, please. And here is Artemisia's a little bit, I would say maybe messier than Giovanna's. Giovanna's is more calligraphic, and she's known for her calligraphy. And so you get the sense of you know, a handwritten letter, even though it's printed. And at the end of the reading their letters to one another, reading the sonnets, we've typed them so that you can have the experience almost of like reading an original letter. Maybe you're not quite sure what a particular word is, but then you can have it at the end of the book to read clearly. So The next image, please. This concludes my part of the presentation, and thank you so much. And now we're going to hear from Marilyn.
Well, a delight, Holly. I'm going to try to read 3 or 4 poems if I can. The first one is a sonnet. It's from the Mother Monument sequence series. It's a portrait of Edmonia Lewis, who was born in 1844 and died in 1907. A sculptor, half African American, half Chippewa, and it tells the story. So that I've given you the essential background. The rest of it, I hope the poem will convey. I quickly outstripped my mentor's meager skills of roughing out and shaping drawing room busts. Now I cut marble with my self-made tools, and it draws its first breath in a cloud of dust. Rasping alabaster with my strong brown hands, I discover who hides in the white stone. Hammer and chisel beat a percussive dance that helps me to briefly forget I am alone, the orphaned daughter of 2 despised races, an eternal exile, a Haitian Chippewa in Rome. Stone speaks to me in earth's ancient voice. It tells me I'll be known, but will know no home. Masked like a bandit, I chip mute figures free to voice in beautiful the pain of history. Let's see if I can fit 2 or 3 of the Sacred Sisters in. I first will read well, I've lost my, I'm going to change my plan. This is Saint Catherine of Bologna, who was born in 1453 and went into a convent and became an artist. Age 14, I was sent to serve at court. I begged to be freed from that privilege into the privilege of poverty, to embrace penance and constant fasting, invited with my sisters to the dance of chaste devotion. Thus I prayed at court, listening over my embroidery. My maiden heart beat with a constant plea. Show me thy face, Lord. Lord, show me thy face. A dove released, I flew to the poor Clares. Then came years when my doubt tempted my faith with remembered footmen. Years when virtue promised no reward other than itself. Years when the logic of the passing world, which jibes at chastity and devotion, rubbed my nose in absurd virginity. I kept my lamp lighted for the bridegroom. Show me thy face, my Lord, my love, I prayed. But I spent my work hours with caught breath, focused on the 2 hairs' breadth of my brush, bringing light and color to the margins of a book of the hours. Or I painted large iconic portraits of mother and child with golden halos, or on the violette with closed eyes, bowed harmonies of the chant. At last, forgetting to pray, show thy face, I glimpsed thy face in the worship of art. Let's see. This is Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, nun artist whom I think most North Americans even have some image of her, Sor Juana de la Cruz. This is in a convent in 1671, San Jerónimo convent in Mexico. At 3, I learned to read another's thoughts. At 5, I learned the beauty of numbers. At 8, the muse chose me and wrote my fate, a fate impossible for a woman, according to men who control the world. Thus, I am called and ordered to refuse to accept the limitations of my sex, for women are not minds, we are bodies. Where in the body does the I reside? An eagle cramped in a canary cage, I soar to the summits only in books, and on lines I scratch with angel feathers. For what but to fly was I given wings? I look down on the landscape of myself. My eyes are lakes, obsidian mirrors, out of which love stares, her eyes full of tears. My hunger for knowledge, my poetry, all of my gifts, men pronounce heresy. Each day is my private inquisition, the church examining each truth I find, sieving my silence for what can't be said, while I burn at the stake of my desire. Am I another of your ironies, endlessly new, self-made creator, Lord? Give me humility. Help me accept that I was made a sunlight-seeking soul and confined to this windowless cell of flesh. Shall I read one more, or shall I? One more. This is sacred sister in Japan, Otagaki Ringetsu. This is dated 1865. Shame, daughter of samurai and geisha, but adopted by an honorable family, I was given happiness snatched away. Husbands, children, they vanished like noon dew. The only certainty is impermanence. So I cut my hair, put on the nun's black robe, and became this humble servant, Lotus Moon, who gathers mud to form into vessels, reverently aware of each moment. Between my palms, I knead a lump of clay, warming it into flexibility and shaping a welcoming receptacle for water, tea, sake, or emptiness. Each carries, like a scent borne on a breeze, the memory of one single moment my poem catches inscribed under the glaze. In whose dream are you dancing, butterfly? White cherry petals flutter down like snow. Small asymmetrical cups carry my fingerprints through the kiln's inferno into usefulness. They fit each holder's hand, fill it with grace, and gift each holder's heart. The moon loves me. Last night it followed me to my bedroom. On teapots, sake sets, pounding my robe in the spring deep stream, I pause, breathe birdsong. As I walk home through twilight mist, wild geese fly where I cannot see, voices trailing. Thank you. Should I introduce the next reader? Would that be Wendy?
Thank you, Marilyn, for those beautiful poems. For what but to fly was I given wings? That should be the theme of our of our reading today. It's really, really beautiful work. I'm very happy to be able to read poems from Holly's next book, For Persis. I was very grateful for the opportunity when she invited me to write these poems because it was something I had never done before. I had written poems about my own family and I had written poems about famous people. But I was asked to write poems about a very real person, an ordinary person, and a person who was a member of Holly's family, her husband's family, the family that Holly married into. And of course, this was such a deeply personal, deeply tragic story that I was being invited into. Um, and I at first was a little apprehensive because I really did not want to intrude on the privacy of these people's grief. Um, but the more I thought about it, the more I loved the idea of being able to give Persis a voice. As Holly mentioned, she died when she was just 2, which is the age at which children are really just beginning to speak. And so here was an opportunity to try to imagine myself into Persis's consciousness and leave something more behind of her by giving her a voice. It also was an interesting and somewhat harrowing idea of being putting myself in the position of the parents who had lost a child. As many of us are parents, and that's a scenario none of us really wants to visit. But it is also such a necessary place to visit for the exploration of the human consciousness, the exploration of human grief. And so it was thinking about that problem of how to imagine them and their grief that I began to think about this idea of a conversation between them. How would the father attend to and mark his grief as opposed to how might a mother, given the difference in the relationships that they each has with the child, a father and a mother. And so that sort of gave me the idea for how to create a series of poems that would really unfold like a conversation. Um, I also have a background in 19th century literature. I was a scholar of Tennyson and a great lover of Tennyson's great elegy, In Memoriam, published in 1850, and also Wordsworth's We Are Seven. There are so many 19th century poets that wrote about the death of children. Tennyson's poem is about the death of his best friend, but nonetheless, it's very much about grieving and Victorian ways of grieving. And so that invited me into being able to go back to that language, the rhythms of that language, the practices that people developed in order to be able to withstand the terrible awfulness of losing people in their lives. As we know, sadly, the death of children was a common occurrence before the advent of the 20th century. And so people actually developed these traditions as a sort of coping mechanism, giving them a way to grieve. And Holly's book just so beautifully with all of the emphasis on Black, on creperie that people wore, on the tear catcher that's part of the book. I mean, she really goes to great lengths to really give us the flavor of that mourning, and by incorporating these various kinds of traditions. So the poems then sort of came quite naturally, it seems, as the conversation, the imagined conversation developed between the parents. So I'll read just a little bit from the introduction and then read the poems. Persis was born on the 29th of August in 1888, and she died in June of 1891. She was the firstborn child of Frank Markham Brigham and Minnie Sill Brigham of Rockville, Connecticut. She contracted scarlet fever and died in her father's arms at the age of 2 years and 9 months. 6 siblings were born after Persis. All of them survived to adulthood. Young as she was when she passed, Persis made a mark on her family. Born exactly 9 months after her parents' marriage on the 16th of November in 1887, she taught her parents and the children that would follow the meaning of love and loss. These poems attempt to tell the story of Persis's tragic death from 3 different perspectives, that of her father, Frank, her mother, Minnie, and that of the child herself. The voices of the grieving parents alternate in poems 1 through 5, and the voice of the aggrieved Persis is finally heard in the last poem. Consider the poems a series of dramatic monologues that call and hearken to one another, gradually accumulating into a conversation or a trialogue, wherein each member of the family reckons with unspeakable grief. Each of the voices articulates a series of responses to the loss of Persis, ranging from denial to grudging acceptance, each indicated by the 6 opening words of the poems. As Holly mentioned earlier, each of the poems begins with one of the letters of Persis's name. So the first poem begins with the word persistence. The second begins with existence. The third, resistance. The fourth, subsistence. The fifth, insistence. And finally, salvation, spelling out Persis. The fact that the opening words of the first 5 poems rhyme suggests that though they differ in meaning, they name states of being that are related to one another, representing a continuum of emotions familiar to every human heart. The name Persis, by the way, means a Persian woman. She's mentioned in the letter of St. Paul as a follower of Jesus, as a hard worker, a beloved person, and who is believing in the Lord. Though Persis did not live a long life, the long life one might have wished for her, she lived on in the memories of her family members and her parents. And she now lives on in these poems. And the epigraph to the book comes from Shakespeare. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. The first sonnet, Frank Markham Brigham. Persistence, dear, is what it takes to spare our precious girl from harm. The love we show, the prayers we make will keep her safe. The righteous arm of God would never strike her down. She's but a little 2 years child. Our lives since she arrived abound in grace and joy. She is so mild and sweet to creatures not her kind. The hare we house inside his hutch, our ancient dog though he be blind, delights in Persis' gentle touch. Fear not, my love, our God will spare her. Though fear I do, I will not share her. Minnie Sill Brigham. Existence, dear, is what we crave. Life is all we've ever known. Should Persis pass, I'll not be brave. This house will no more be a home. This earth, a fresh dug, empty grave, just waiting for me and my kin, that seeks to swallow up my babe, an innocent. What was her sin that she should suffer as she does? Her limbs on fire, her forehead burning. She should be playing out of doors. She should be singing. She should be learning poems and prayers that glorify this wondrous world. She cannot die. Frank Markham Brigham. Resistance, dear, will never do. The God who cares for me and you cares for us all, and Persis too. His will is like a mighty wind. Of course, our Persis never sinned. But if he wants her by his side, she's his child too, his very own. The rules by which we must abide are writ in ink, engraved in stone. The child was lent to us, not given. Though we be bruised, we won't be riven. We've other babes, we do not lack heirs and love. Though we'll wear black, it's time, my dear, to give her back. Minnie Sill Brigham. And this one, by the way, has this marvelous image of Persis as a 2-year-old. Subsistence, dear, you offer me. The lifelong joy I thought was mine inheres in her, my darling girl. I cannot live in such a world. A child so good, a child so fine as Persis cannot be undone by fret or fever. She's the one I hoped for. On the night we wed, the night I lay down in your bed, I dreamt of her. I saw her curls, her little hands, her dimpled cheeks, the daughter every mother seeks to call her own. And mine she'll be. We're tethered for eternity. Frank Markham Brigham. Another photo. Insistence could not save our babe. Love and duty kept us whole. You think me cruel, you think me cold, but darling, I'm sore afraid we can't survive this hellish grief. Life is sad and life is brief. I know this better than before. I feel it in my being's core. So take my hand and take my word. Our little girl, our little bird will be the only child we'll lose. God forgive me, I refuse to let him have another one. My debt to him is paid. We're done. And this last poem in this grouping is spoken by Persis. Salvation is the gift I'm promised by the God who took me quick and young. Yet a child cannot be but honest. I weep that my life's so soon done. The life I lived and loved with you, my mother, father, both so dear. I'm still a baby, barely 2. Many are the months and years the 3 of us won't spend together. And yet, I know that soon and soon we will be joined again forever. We'll laugh and sing a different tune, one of joy, no more of grief. Our mourning will be heartbreaking and brief. And the last poem I'll read is part of this beautiful prayer card that Holly designed with one more sonnet on it, and also Persis's birth and death dates. And it's called Persis in Paradise. I was your angel back on earth. I played and sang each precious day. Most joyous was my day of birth. Heaven was just a breath away. I brought our household love and cheer. My little coat, my red beret kept me warm. 2 happy years. Heaven was just a breath away. Then sickness came, and now, my dears, you grieve my loss each passing day. But do not weep. Oh, dry your tears, for now I am an angel here. Soon, soon again we'll sing and play. Heaven is just a breath away. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Those were very moving poems, Marilyn and Angela. Of course, I was thrilled when Angela introduced me to Holly, and I looked up her work, and I had seen some of it on the Mezzo Cammin site, posted on that site. And I looked at her website. She's I think a really kind of, to me, a visionary feminist artist. And the book proposed amicizia of the friendship of two Baroque women artists, Artemisia Gentileschi and Giovanna Garzoni, was very exciting to me, an opportunity to learn about them and their work. Artemisia Gentileschi, she's usually called Artemisia instead of Gentileschi to distinguish her from her father. And I mentioned her father in the course of the sonnets. His name's Orazio. So when I say Orazio, I'm talking about Orazio Gentileschi. He trained Artemisia in his workshop, and he was a colleague of Caravaggio. Any event. So Artemisia, who actually over time became much more famous than her father, as sometimes happens, the student surpasses the teacher. In any event, she's really well known for her image of Judith cutting off the head of Holofernes. That's become very famous image, what they call now iconic, kind of overused word, but true in her case. Garzoni, as you see, a very different kind of artist, as you could tell from Holly's contemporary take on a Garzoni work. She was a miniaturist, and the microscope as well as the telescope were the new technological inventions of their day. And Galileo was actually an associate of theirs at the court in Florence of Cosimo II of the Medici, where they met. And though he didn't invent the microscope or the telescope, he figured out how to really put them to use and opened up whole worlds of the very small, such as the very small work that Garzoni did. Seeing for the first time, people really saw insects, for example, what they really looked like under a microscope, and the very large, the cosmos, which was also opening up with travel and trade to other countries. And that shows up also in Garzoni's work, the blue and white Chinese style bowl, for example, that Holly has in the painting that she did for the book Amicizia. So given this opportunity to reconstruct the friendship between these two artists, a friendship that recent scholarship has shown went on for decades. Apparently the whole lifetime of Artemisia. She died younger than Garzoni. She was stuck in Naples, frankly. She was in Naples. She got to Naples when she was about 30, and she never really managed to leave, except for relatively brief trips, such as the trip to England that she took with Garzoni. And Naples at the time was extremely tough town. And also that periodic epidemics would sweep through. And though the circumstances of her death are not known, it's widely believed that she died during one of those epidemics. Parenthetically, the same thing that happened to Leopardi, the leading romantic Italian poet. So I thought of course, this would call for reconstructing their friendship, would call for a dialogue between the two poets. And a sonnet exchange or letter epistolary, a letter exchange of sonnets was something that was longstanding practice in Italy by the Baroque period. It started actually in the Middle Ages. Dante had done it famously. And of course, if Dante does it, then it's good enough for everyone else. And it became something that educated people did to kind of show their skill. That was something that was expected of you at that time, was to be able to write a good sonnet and engage in these letter exchanges of sonnets with other people. And in fact, as Holly indicated, some of Artemisia's sonnets have been discovered recently. They were published this February of 2024, letter sonnets that she exchanged with a gentleman at the time. Okay, these sonnets are also, so there's 7 of them. They're also in a sonnet crown. And that means that the last sentence of each sonnet, becomes the first sentence of the next sonnet. And the first line of the sonnet in the sequence becomes the last line of the sonnet in the sequence, so that the sonnets go around in a circle. This is a sequence of 7. Crowns can be anywhere from 7 up to an unlimited number. And at this time, the Baroque period, actually crowns were written. Tasso had written one, and John Donne's very famous sonnet crown was published in the early 1600s. Okay, so 2 things to know about the sonnets I'm going to read. Well, I already told you about Orazio. That's Orazio Gentileschi. When Artemisia says in one of her sonnets, "For I am painting herself," that's painting with a capital P. She's referring to herself as the allegory of painting, and she has a famous work called The Self-Portrait as the Allegory of Painting. Okay, let me then start. The first sonnet is Giovanna presenting the book to Artemisia. Imagine, friend, our immortality. Centuries hence, my gift to you survives in tribute to our camaraderie, a bond forged through ambitions, works, and lives. So take this work, safe in its walnut shell, and gather a bouquet of memory: Rome, Florence, Venice, Britain, Napoli, the way stops on our journey to excel. It is your courage, Artemisia, that so inspires. Fierce fire, your skills convert into expression, capturing idea in paint. You've urged me forward to assert my own abilities and see them through. You've shown what women steeped in art can do. And Artemisia replies, "You've shown what women steeped in art can do, my dearest friend, and this exquisite token born of your mind marks our long, unbroken bond. Now we remember and renew. It is the keen precision of your hand that grasps the world observed in fine detail as through a microscope. You understand how life beheld in miniature scale reveals the greatness of the universe. I take this kernel as a replica of that vast grandeur, serving to disperse your insights. May your Artemisia reflect in some small part your scope and skill. Our dialogue still sparks my wit and will." Giovanna replies, "Our dialogue still sparks my wit and will propel me to remember our first meeting. Florence. We were both young, I younger still, and oh, the dazzling brilliance of that fleeting court, with Galileo, Buonarroti, the Grand Duchess, Cosimo II, and you, first woman in the Arts Academy, a studio, handsome commissions too. Your daring gypsy pose, a turban-bound self-portrait in a low-cut gown, led me to paint mine as Apollo, laurel-crowned, a coy, contrasting personality. That first coincidence of our careers, self-portraiture, the genre of smoke and mirrors. Artemisia. Self-portraiture, the genre of smoke and mirrors, is a mode I've manipulated through the years, exploiting its subtle aspects in shifting guise, magician and sorceress, master of disguise. Installing my image with Europe's most cultured elite, I've assumed different postures of elegant conceit. Am I Susanna, shielding from men's stare? Am I Lucretia? Death defeats despair. I'm a warrior princess, claiming women's share. I'm a gypsy temptress, striking up an air. I am Saint Catherine, faith evades a snare. But am I Judith? Cross me if you dare, for I'm painting herself, intensely absorbed in the act. It's the practice of painting that merges my vision with fact. Giovanna. It's the practice of painting that merges my vision with fact as I conjure a miniature world where the two interact. Tiny insects entreat you to enter their realm. How they stare, and the smallest of creatures have infinite secrets to share. Milky porcelain transports to a make-believe Chinese estate where the blue and white landscape enhances each vessel and plate. Ladies stroll through a garden to rest near the old ginkgo tree. They say I was the first pioneer of pure chinoiserie. I've assembled rare flowers collected all over the world. In a time warp, they've cycled through life while their petals unfurled. Has the field mouse just nibbled at one of the ripening plums that allures with its sweet, pungent scent as its corpus succumbs? I have worked to uncover what nature has concealed, for through design, ideals are revealed. Artemisia. As through design ideals are revealed, my history paintings reach art's highest goal and prove that at this woman's core is the soul of a Caesar. When Orazio appealed for help, he never could paint women well. I left for England, though you know that story, how ill he was there, dying, how it fell to me to save the Greenwich allegory. I don't know what I would have done, my friend, were you not with me at my father's end. Here, Naples is as rough a town as ever, but work goes well. Although colleagues endeavor to collaborate, I cannot feel at ease, for the streets are rife with fighting and disease. I long to leave someday, but God knows when. Addio, then, until we meet again. And Giovanna has the last word. Addio, then. Until we meet again, may this memento show what friends can mean in art. This missive born of brush and pen. Dear Artemisia, so like that queen whose daring prompted Xerxes to exclaim his men were women, and his women men when she foiled the foe's attempts to apprehend her warship. Fittingly, you bear her name. and your resilient personality will trump what fate your struggles may portend. You'll persevere, and you'll remember me. Remember all we've labored to transcend. Remember what we've been and yet will be. Imagine, friend, our immortality.
Imagine, friend, our immortality. What a fantastic line to conclude that beautiful group of sonnets with. Thank you so much, Wendy. What a joy to hear those poems again. Lovely to hear them in May and lovely to hear them again. Thank you so much, Holly, Wendy, and Marilyn for regathering together today in order to reprise our panel. But mostly thank you all for your beautiful work. I think all of us would agree that it's a joy to be one of 4 women artists who have collaborated to bring back to life these women and one little girl from the past who have lived consequential, meaningful lives, and to give them some kind of immortality, the immortality that Wendy just spoke of. We get to hear the voices of these women echo across time: Artemisia, Giovanna, St. Catherine of Bologna, Hilaria Batista, Minnie, Brigham, and of course, little Persis, as well as Lizzie Siddle from I Wake Again, and all of the women in the Mother Monument. To quote another wonderful line from Amicizia that Wendy wrote, with just a small revision, we've shown what women steeped in art can do, both our own art and the art of these sisters in art that we have been able to celebrate today. So thanks to all of you, our viewers, for joining us in this celebration of the power and the beauty of the image and word. We hope to see you in the various poetry and art circles in which we travel. Grazie.
Thank you, everyone.